Hello everyone. Today's video is going to be a little different. There's no predator, no reconstructions, no disappearance in a forest you've probably never been to. It's just me talking to you directly about what's coming next and about something I'd wanted to address for a while. But first, some good news you might not have been expecting. There are 2 new books on the way. And then, after that, I want to address where I stand on AI, because it's a conversation worth having honestly. So, let's start with Dark Tides. For those of you who have followed the blog for some time, you might be familiar with some of the early preview chapters that I featured on the blog. I think the first one was back in 2019, and overall this is one of those stories that I've been tinkering with for about a decade, if not longer. And the great thing is, it's almost ready. One of the benefits of just adding to it over the last few years. There's certainly a few stories like that in different genres in my back files, but Dark Tides is easily the closest to being finished, as I'm now on the 3rd draft. And this story is a little bit of a departure. It's not a cat story or a Bigfoot novel. There's no unknown predator in the forests or mountains. This one goes somewhere else entirely, as the title suggests. Dark Tides is an environmental science fiction horror set in the oceans. It exists in a space between what we're doing to marine ecosystems and what might be living in the parts of the ocean we still don't fully understand. And of course, that space is much bigger than most people realise. We've mapped more of the surface of Mars than we have the ocean floor. And the real creatures that live in the deep, the ones we do know about, are already strange enough that fiction barely has to reach or overgeneralise. As you've hopefully seen in my writing before, I rely on real behaviours and the zoological principles of the natural world to ground my stories in reality. Get ready to meet a species of octopus that uses the stingers from the deadly Portuguese man of war to subdue its prey, and that's not one I'm making up. The unknown of the ocean is what's always drawn me to it as a setting. It's the last genuinely unknown frontier. And, of course, unknown frontiers, as this channel probably makes clear, is where I like to spend a lot of my time. If all goes well, Dark Tides will be out before the end of this month, with a short period for pre-orders. Then, in July, I'm hoping to bring you Werewolves and Wildmen. This one is closer to home. It's a short story collection featuring Bigfoot, Dogman and other related cryptids that sit just at the edge of what the evidence can account for, in the way that has always genuinely interested me. Not as folklore, not as campfire material, but as that serious question about what it would actually mean if something like that existed. I've of course written about Bigfoot before in Rogue, and it's territory that I'll always come back to, I'm sure. But these stories are different in form, shorter, more concentrated, each one a single encounter, a single moment where the world becomes something other than what someone thought it was. Again, if you followed the blog for some time, you'll be familiar with some of the stories, such as The Converse Carnivore, which is based on an encounter described by the late and great Linda Godfrey, who very kindly spoke with me and allowed me to shape a story around it. That story first appeared on the blog in 2016, but there'll be some new stories to sink your teeth into too, pun intended. Werewolves and Wildmen definitely needs a little more work for Dark Tides, but I'm hopefully going to have that one out by the end of July, as I say. And don't worry, these projects don't mean I've abandoned Predatory Nature, which will be the next instalment of the Thomas Walker stories and the Beast series in general. I'm about 70% of the way there, and I still intend for that to be out later this year, I promise. Now, let's talk about AI, because AI does play a role in the creation of these two new projects, and I want to be upfront about that. I recently saw a content creator remark on what they described as people being totally reliant on AI, and specifically on how YouTube thumbnails increasingly lean on AI, generated graphics, those sort of things. They found them boring and off-putting. And that criticism is fair, and I wanted to bring it up because I do use AI. I use Midjourney and other platforms for thumbnail backgrounds. I use AI tools for research, for generating social media assets, and for parts of the workflow that would otherwise just not get done, or if would get done badly by someone, i.e. me, who is not and has never pretended to be a graphic designer. I do understand that I am skipping a potential learning curve that others have taken the time to absorb. But ultimately, and to coin the great Dr. McCoy, damn it, Jim, I'm a writer, not a designer, social media manager, marketer, and content creator. Although, obviously, aspects of all those things are part of what I do for a living. And right now, it's just me and what I earn from my writing. I am currently between roles in the real world. I can't afford to look to third parties to help with design. And I don't think it's feasible that any designer would be able to take on that level of work anyway. That's why, at this moment in time, both Dark Tides and Werewolves and Wildmen will both be ebook KDP launches only, and I have attempted to create the covers myself. If they ever become printed books, I promise that that will change. I want to be upfront that I think these are great stories, but they are also new sources of revenue I can add to my bibliography, which is much needed right now. I think it's important that I'm honest about that, and I want to be honest about why, because the easy version of this conversation, that it's just a tool, move on, is a little too glib. And the other easy version, that anyone who uses it is complicit in something indefensible, I don't think fairly fits my actual situation. If you follow my personal social media, you'll know that I genuinely acknowledge the criticisms are real. I'm quite outspoken about AI in general and how flippantly it is being used without real consideration or responsibility. The fact that many of these models were trained on creative work without the consent or compensation of the people who made it is a genuine ethical problem. As someone who writes for a living, I feel the weight of that more than I probably show. I'm certainly not dismissing it. Two of my own novels, both Rogue and The Daughters of the Darkness, were both used illegally to train AI models, and I am unlikely to ever see compensation for that. The environmental cost is also very real. These systems are not free in any meaningful sense of the word, and I think acknowledging that matters. So here's my honest position. I run this channel and my other projects alone. There's no team, no budget, no production assistant waiting in the wings. What I can do, what I'm actually any good at, is write, research, and present. Most of my notes are still handwritten. I have more real books for research than should humanly be possible, and more arrive by the week, which makes no sense for someone who just said he's on a budget. That's where almost of my time goes. The alternative to using AI for thumbnail backgrounds isn't hiring a professional designer, it's buying or subscribing to expensive software I don't have, then spending months learning how to use it to produce something passable, while the things I'm actually here to do don't get done. That doesn't serve these channels, and I don't think it serves you guys as readers. It's also worth clarifying that platforms I do use, such as Canva and Adobe, both now have built-in AI tools. I'm not sure there is a clean hands position available anymore. And anyone who tells you they've opted out entirely is probably not being fully honest about what's inside the software they're already using. Another area where I've used AI tools is for working through listings and metadata on Amazon for optimizing the kind of administrative work that would otherwise take days and produce worse results. On the KDP side specifically, getting the listings structured, understanding categories, and making sure the books are actually findable, AI assistants produced immediate measurable results, including a brand new page for the series, which I didn't know you could do. This is work that might have taken weeks of trial and error, and it got done properly faster. Ultimately, I feel my current choice isn't AI versus a professional cover designer or a metadata specialist. The choice is AI versus doing it badly or not doing it at all. But here is the line. The books are mine. And I think that is worth clarifying given recent events in the publishing world. If you've been following publishing news, you'll know about the Commonwealth Short Story Prize. A regional winner for 2026, Jamir Nazir's story, The Serpent in the Grove, was flagged by AI detection tools as being largely machine generated. The same analysis reportedly identified multiple other stories in the 2025 and 2026 competitions. The Commonwealth Foundation put out a statement, Granta temporarily took the story down, and the whole thing has become a fairly heated conversation about authorship, trust, and what competitions are actually testing. That matters, and I want to be clear where I stand on it. Entering a competition for human written fiction with AI-generated work is deception. It's not a grey area. The rules exist for a reason, and circumventing them isn't a bold artistic statement. It's just dishonest, if that's what happened. But that's not the only conversation happening. Around the same time, Olga Tokarczuk, who won the Nobel Prize in Literature 2018, spoke publicly about using AI in her creative process. She described asking a language model what songs her characters might have danced to decades ago. She called it, in translation, an asset of incredible proportions. The response from parts of the literary community was swift and frankly disproportionate. There were calls to strip her of her Nobel. She issued a clarifying statement which said, and this is essentially her position in plain terms, that she uses AI the same way she'd use a library, for research, for fact-checking, for going faster through material she'd need to verify anyway, and that none of her actual writing was generated by it. To which my honest reaction is, who could reasonably object to that? Because here's the thing. The distinction matters enormously. What Tokarczuk was described and what the literary community reacted to as if it were a confession is simply using a tool for research and preparation. That is not the same as having a machine write your book. My position is basically the same as hers, though I'd add a few layers specific to what I actually do. Every word of Dark Tides is my writing. Every story in Werewolves and Wildmen is my voice, my construction, my thinking. AI does not write my fiction. It doesn't draft it, outline it, or tidy it up afterwards. The books exist because I wrote them. That is the line I won't cross, not because I've resolved the philosophy of it neatly, but in short, because I don't think it works. I've used AI to create content for LinkedIn and in my previous roles, and my experience is that even the best prompts and systems still generate copy that sounds like AI. And in fiction especially, you can't get away from the metaphor stacking and emotional shorthand. It also just can't do drama and action like fight scenes and anything I would describe as hitting hard, because it can't gauge that human aspect that's necessary. In short, the amount of editing you have to do to make AI fiction writing passable, at least for me, isn't worth it, and you might as well write it yourself. That said, it was also recently reported that an author using the pseudonym Coral Heart produced 200 novels in a single year under 21 different pen names and generated over $100,000 in income. I won't deny something like that could solve a lot of my problems, but it did also make me think, how on earth can I compete with that? As I'm sure more will try to follow in their footsteps. But ultimately, it's not where I want to go. My books are worth reading, and this channel is worth watching, I hope, because there is a real perspective behind it from someone who has spent a long time inside these subjects. The moment that gets outsourced, it stops being what it is. I completely understand that designers will feel the same way, and that my stance is therefore somewhat hypocritical in their eyes. But it's where I currently stand. It's not a comfortable position, and it's not a clean one, but it is my honest one. Takarzuk put it well. Even if some of the framing around her comments was uncharitable, she said writers, because of how their minds work, broadly, associatively, across enormous ranges of material, may actually be better placed than most to use these tools well. And I think there's something in that. The tool is only as good as the understanding brought to it. Ultimately, AI has helped me get 2 books out of a drawer and into the world. Books that were already written. That's what it's for in my workflow. The writing itself will always be mine, and that won't change. I promise you that now. I'm sure you will notice things in my books that today look like potential AI tells. Specifically, the use of M-dashes and also the fact that I tend to use the rule of 3. If you've been with me since the beginning, you'll know both of these things existed in my books long before AI ever did. I like an M-dash almost as much as I like an Oxford comma. And when I list species, especially of plants, when I'm describing natural environments and settings, I tend to do it in 3s. Now that I'm aware of these, I might work around them, but also they are part of my natural writing style, so I'm unlikely to do away with these things altogether. And I think it's worth bearing in mind that should you put the opening paragraphs of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein into an AI checker, it will give you a 98% probability that it was created by AI. Whereas the truth, of course, is that there is a 98% probability that it was used to train AI how to write, and it can't tell the difference. So just be a little cautious about what you read and accept when it comes to AI-generated books and stories, even though I accept the controversy is real and there are repercussions to its use. But in the meantime, there's 2 new books to look forward to and more episodes coming soon, including cases I've been sitting on for a while and a few things I'm genuinely looking forward to getting in front of you and talking about. Please like and subscribe if you'd like to support me and my writing, and thank you as always for watching. I'll see you all again very soon. Bye for now.